No sleep, no food, no bath for decades. These real lives are stranger than any movie. In a small village in southern Iran, there lived a man who became a legend, not because of fame, money, or inventions, but because he didn't bathe for more than 6 decades. His name was Amu Haji, and by the time most people heard about him, he had already become one of the most unusual people on the planet. Covered in layers of dust and soot, his skin had turned a leathery gray, and his hair resembled a bird's nest baked in the desert sun. He didn't avoid bathing out of laziness or a quirky habit. He truly believed that water would make him sick. Locals around the village of Dejga accepted him as part of their world. To outsiders, he might have looked like someone from a post-apocalyptic film, but to the villagers, he was a quiet, peaceful man who simply chose a different path. He lived in a hole in the ground for years, then moved to a crude shack made of rocks. His meals? Mostly rotten meat, including porcupine. His drink of choice? Water from puddles or rusted oil cans. Still, Amu Haji wasn't desperate or miserable. He laughed, smoked, and chatted with the people who visited him. Scientists and journalists were stunned when they discovered that this man, with no access to modern hygiene, didn't suffer from any severe diseases. His immune system was somehow incredibly strong. In fact, he became the subject of curiosity for health researchers. Some even speculated that constant exposure to bacteria had made him unusually resistant to common infections. It was like real-life superhero immunity, though in the most unexpected package. In his final year, after decades of refusing water, he finally agreed to take a bath. And shortly after, he passed away. Some called it a coincidence. Others whispered that he had been right all along. His life raised strange questions about health, belief, and what the human body can adapt to. Out of all the strange stories tucked away in history, the life of Mihelo Totos might be one of the quietest and most bizarre. Born in the late 1800s in Greece, he lost his mother at birth and was brought to Mount Athos, a remote Orthodox monastery that has banned women for over 1,000 years. Monks there live simple lives of prayer, silence, and strict isolation from the outside world. For Mihelo, this wasn't a choice. He grew up entirely within the walls of the monastery, and according to accounts, he died at over 80 years old, without ever laying eyes on a single woman. Not even a glimpse from a newspaper photo, not even a passing stranger on a distant road. His entire world was male monks, stone walls, icons, and the sound of church bells. The mountain itself is a closed republic. No females allowed, not even female animals. While most people go through countless relationships, families, and heartbreaks, Totos lived a life untouched by all of it. Some saw it as devotion, others as a peculiar sort of experiment in isolation. We don't have selfies of Mihelo or interviews. What remains is the eerie record of a man who, by circumstance and tradition, missed an entire part of the human experience. It wasn't science fiction, it wasn't a myth. It was one man's real life, shaped entirely by walls and rules most people would never dare to follow. A life so distant from ours it almost feels like it came from another planet. What would you give up to prove a point? For Amar Barati, the answer was simple: his right arm. One day in the 1970s, he raised his arm above his head in a spiritual vow, and never put it down again. That arm stayed up, day and night, through wind, heat, illness, and sleep, for more than 45 years. At first, it was excruciating. His fingers curled, the muscles shriveled, the nerves died. Over time it became locked in place, like a branch of a tree that forgot how to bend. Amar Barati wasn't looking for fame. He did it as a symbol of peace and devotion, inspired by his spiritual path as a sadhu, or holy man. What started as a personal gesture grew into something more. Other sadhus began to follow his example. Some even held their arms up for shorter periods, trying to feel a sliver of what he did. And here's what's fascinating. The longer he kept that arm raised, the more people began to visit him. Not to gawk, but to understand. His act became a silent protest, a strange kind of sacrifice that left even doctors stunned. How could the human body survive this? How could someone live like that for decades? Some people write books, some people build monuments. Amar Barati just raised his hand and rewrote what endurance could mean. And just like Mihelo Totos lived a life without ever seeing half the world's population, Barati gave up using half his body just to make a point. In the dry hills of Gujarat, India, lived a man who baffled scientists, doctors, and pretty much anyone who heard his story. Praad Johnny, also known as Mataji, claimed that he hadn't eaten a single bite of food or drunk a drop of water. for over 70 years. No snacks, no meals, no hydration. He said a goddess blessed him as a child, giving him the power to survive without physical nourishment. To most people, that sounds impossible. And yet, no one could fully prove him wrong. In the early 2000s and again in 2010, Indian military doctors actually placed him under round-the-clock surveillance in a controlled hospital environment. No food, no water, no bathroom breaks. Over the span of 15 days, they watched him closely. Not only did he not eat or drink, his body didn't even show signs of dehydration. His weight stayed stable, his organs kept functioning, and he walked, talked, and prayed just like any normal person. Of course, skeptics raised questions. They wondered about camera blind spots or tiny loopholes. But even among doubters, one thing was clear. Praad Johnny wasn't weak, sick, or frail. He looked like a healthy man in his 80s, full of energy and calm focus. He dressed like a sage in bright red robes, his long silver beard giving him the look of a character from an ancient epic, or maybe honestly a real-life Yoda. What he did, if fully true, defied biology. If it wasn't true, it was still one of the most extreme and dedicated performances of all time. Either way, his case was studied by government officials and serious researchers, not just curious bloggers. Whether miracle or mystery, Praad Johnny became a symbol of how little we truly understand the limits of the human body. Not all castaways are accidental. Masafumi Nagasaki chose his island life and stripped away nearly everything that came with modern society. For 29 years he lived completely alone on Soto Banari, a tiny uninhabited island in Okinawa, Japan. No electricity, no running water, no clothes. He arrived in his early 50s and never looked back. Every morning he'd greet the sun with a silent ritual. Every evening he'd rest beneath the stars, untouched by traffic, phones, or deadlines. What drove him there wasn't madness or survival, it was peace. He once said that clothes felt unnatural, that people always tried to please others too much, and that he felt freer living as nature intended. His only contact with the outside world was a boat that occasionally brought him water and rice. Sometimes storms would hit and he'd just dig into the sand and wait it out. When asked what he missed most, he simply said, nothing. For nearly 3 decades, his only neighbors were crabs, birds, and the endless ocean breeze. He didn't have Wi-Fi, but his story eventually did. A photographer stumbled upon him in the 2000s, and soon, the world learned about the Japanese Robinson Crusoe, the quiet man with wild gray hair, sun-darkened skin, and a gaze that seemed to see through the noise of the modern world. In 2018, authorities removed him from the island for health reasons, against his will. He didn't ask for rescue. He didn't want fame. Masafumi Nagasaki just wanted to be left alone. And for nearly 30 years, he succeeded, becoming one of the most remarkable examples of chosen solitude in our time. Most people, start to lose their minds after just 48 hours without sleep. Hallucinations, memory loss, and even organ damage can set in fast. But Enakt Thai, a farmer from Quang Nam province in Vietnam, has reportedly gone without sleep since the early 1970s. That's about 20,000 nights without rest. And the most unbelievable part, he's still alive, still working, still wide awake. It all started after a fever in 1973. Thai recovered, but his ability to fall asleep just vanished. At first, he thought it would pass, but weeks turned into months, then years. He tried medicine, traditional herbs, even alcohol. Nothing worked. But unlike the zombies you'd expect from that kind of insomnia, he kept farming, digging, carrying heavy loads, and walking miles every day. He said his body just adapted. Locals even nicknamed him the Sleepless Man. Researchers have visited him, media has documented his story, and still, there's no medical explanation that fully makes sense. He's been examined, and while signs of long-term sleep deprivation should be obvious, Thai shows none of the typical effects. He says he rests his body while lying down but never truly loses consciousness. His eyes stay open, his mind stays sharp. Some doctors believe he might experience microsleeps, tiny split-second moments of unconscious rest that keep him functioning. Others suggest an incredibly rare neurological condition, but no one has cracked the case. It's like a real-life twist on Fight Club. Except this man isn't fighting, he's planting vegetables and living a simple, tireless life. Whether a medical mystery or an extreme biological outlier, Enakt Thai has turned what would destroy most people into just his way of being. If aging is inevitable, then Ching Yuen might be the biggest mystery in the history of time itself. According to some records, this Chinese herbalist was born in 1677, or possibly even earlier, and died in 1933. That would make him 256 years old at the time of his death. Yes, 2.5 centuries in one lifetime. While modern science doesn't confirm it with hard evidence, official Chinese documents, including a congratulatory letter from a government official, suggest his birthdate and age were taken seriously. Li wasn't a wizard or a monk hiding in the mountains. He was a real person, reportedly married 23 times and fathered over 200 children. He was known across provinces as a master of herbs, martial arts, and internal energy practices like Qigong. His secret, according to interviews before his death, was simple: stay calm, eat lightly, walk often, and never argue. He said, "Keep a quiet heart, sit like a tortoise, walk sprightly like a pigeon, and sleep like a dog." Eyewitnesses claimed that Li looked like a man in his 60s even in his final years. He was described as cheerful, strong, and mentally sharp. He sold herbs like ginseng, goji berries, and lingji mushrooms, plants now studied for their potential anti-aging properties. It's no surprise that his name shows up in longevity studies and health documentaries even today. Of course, skeptics argue that his age was exaggerated, or that several people with the same name may have been confused over generations, but Li Ching Yuen's story was accepted by both local villagers and government officials. He wasn't treated as a myth, but as a respected elder who had seen empires rise and fall, all within a single lifetime. Whether he lived 256 years or not, his lifestyle and reputation are enough to spark fascination. In a world where people are chasing the next miracle diet, Li might have unlocked something far more powerful: endurance through simplicity. In the dense jungles of southern Nepal, a teenage boy sat cross-legged beneath a tree, and didn't move, for days, then weeks, then months. Locals thought he was in a trance. Others believed they were witnessing a miracle. His name was Rah Bahadur Bamjon, but many started calling him the Buddha Boy, a living echo of Siddhartha Gautama himself. What made him so extraordinary wasn't just his stillness, it was the claim that he went without food or water during that time. Crowds gathered, cameras rolled. People from all over Nepal came to see the boy who sat silently under the peepal tree, eyes closed, deep in meditation, untouched by the outside world. He reportedly remained motionless for up to 10 months, meditating for as many as 20 hours a day, no eating, no drinking, no speaking. Some villagers even claimed they witnessed him glowing faintly at night like something out of a myth or sci-fi film. In 2005, journalists and TV crews arrived to document the phenomenon. Some captured footage of him sitting perfectly still for days at a time. Researchers were intrigued. Security had to be arranged as the crowds grew massive. Even skeptics admitted something strange was happening. He wasn't looking for fame, fortune, or followers. He just wanted silence and isolation. Later on, Bamjon would reappear from time to time, still practicing intense meditation, but controversies followed as well. That part of his story turned more complex. But no one could forget the early images. A teenage boy sitting under the tree, unmoving and silent, as if carved from stone, while the jungle pulsed with life around him. Climbing Mount Everest once is a lifetime achievement. Doing it without bottled oxygen, that's elite. But doing it 10 times without oxygen while guiding others is something only one man has ever done: Ang Rita Sherpa, known as the Snow Leopard. Born in the highlands of Nepal, Ang Rita wasn't just a mountaineer. He was a living legend in the world of extreme endurance. For him, the death zone, where oxygen levels are 1/3 of sea level, was just part of the route. From 1983 to 1996, Ang Rita stood on the summit of the world's tallest mountain 10 times. No oxygen tanks, no flashy gear, just grit, knowledge of the mountains, and lungs that seemed engineered by nature itself. Doctors and scientists were baffled by his physical abilities. His blood oxygen levels, even in extreme altitudes, remained remarkably steady. Climbers often rely on bottled oxygen above 26,000 feet, where your body begins to slowly shut down. Not Ang Rita. He once summited Everest during the harsh winter of 1987, with hurricane-force winds tearing across the peak, and still didn't use oxygen. That record remains unbeaten. The mountain doesn't give second chances easily, but Ang Rita danced on its ridges again and again. He retired with humility, never seeking fame. His strength came from experience, not ego. Unlike many high-altitude climbers of today, Ang Rita walked without a camera crew, without endorsements. Just him, the ice, and the sky. He passed away in 2020, but to this day, no one has matched his incredible legacy. 10 summits, no oxygen, and no fear. In 1944, Shuichi Yokoy was a Japanese soldier stationed on the island of Guam during World War II. When American forces took the island, he didn't surrender. Instead, he vanished into the jungle and stayed there. For 28 years, Yokoy lived underground, hiding in a cave he dug himself, surviving off roots, fruits, and fish. He believed the war was still ongoing, or that if it had ended, it was dishonorable to return defeated. He wove clothes from tree bark and made tools from scrap metal. His cave was no bigger than a closet, hidden by thick forest, with a bamboo grate for ventilation. He came out only at night, scavenging silently, always alert, always alone. For nearly 3 decades, he avoided every trace of modern life. No radio, no letters, not even a match. When he was finally discovered by local hunters in 1972, Yokoy was thin, but strong. He bowed politely and said one of the most haunting sentences in history. "It is with much embarrassment that I return." His homecoming to Japan was emotional. He became a national figure overnight, not just as a soldier but as a man frozen in time. While most people struggle to go a day without checking their phones, Shuichi Yokoy survived 28 years with nothing but instincts and discipline. His story is strange, tragic, and deeply human, proof of what the mind can hold on to and what the body can endure long after the world moves on. A hiccup usually lasts a few minutes, maybe hours if you're unlucky. But for Charles Osborne, it became a way of life, for 68 straight years. Starting in 1922 after a fall while attempting to weigh a pig, something in his diaphragm went off track. From that moment, his body began hiccuping non-stop, up to 40 times per minute. That's roughly 430 million hiccups over his lifetime, a number so staggering it landed him in the Guinness World Records. He didn't go viral online. He went legendary in medical journals and talk shows. Doctors examined him, poked, scanned, and theorized. They tried hypnosis, carbon monoxide therapy, and countless medications. Nothing worked. The hiccups just stayed. They were violent at first, shaking his body and voice. But over time, they softened, just enough for him to carry on with daily life. And carry on he did. He worked, got married twice, and had 8 children. He learned how to talk while hiccuping, how to eat without choking, and how to sleep through the involuntary spasms. Toward the end of his life, the hiccups mysteriously stopped, just as suddenly as they'd started. By then, he was 96. Osborne's life was both incredibly ordinary and unbelievably strange. He didn't climb mountains or vanish into jungles, but he fought a private battle every second of the day for nearly 7 decades. And he did it without bitterness, just patience. Charles Osborne didn't just endure the world's longest hiccup, he turned it into a life lived with quiet, relentless strength. Some people plant a tree to mark a memory. Jadav Pyang planted an entire forest, alone. Starting in 1979 when he was just a teenager, Pyang noticed that the sandbar near his village in Assam, India, was eroding rapidly. With no trees to hold the soil, floods and heat were stripping the land bare. While most people moved on, he stayed, and started planting. First came bamboo, then slowly saplings of native trees. Every day he planted and watered by hand. No machines, no funding, no crowd cheering him on, just a young man with a goal to bring life back to dead land. Over 4 decades later, that same patch of barren soil is now Molai Forest, a 1,360-acre ecosystem teeming with deer, elephants, birds, even tigers. Locals call him the Forest Man of India. Environmentalists fly in just to walk through what he created, but Jadav never looked for praise. He says he only wanted to protect his home. He even built a house inside the forest and continues to live there, coexisting with the wildlife he helped return. At a time when forests are vanishing by the minute, one man quietly built one with his own hands. No internet campaigns, no viral clips, just a daily act of devotion to the earth. While others debated climate change, Jadav Pyang was out there, one tree at a time, changing the future. Some people live loud, public lives. Henry Darger didn't. He was a janitor in Chicago. Quiet, unnoticed, and a bit of an oddball to neighbors. He lived alone in a one-room apartment, barely spoke to anyone, and had no known friends or family connections. But after his death in 1973, his landlord opened the door to clean out the room and discovered one of the most unexpected artistic legacies in American history. There, stacked in piles, was a handwritten novel longer than anything most people had ever seen, over 15,000 pages, complete with illustrations, maps, and characters. The title? The story of the Vivian girls in what is known as the realms of the unreal. It told the tale of young girls leading a rebellion in a sprawling, war-torn fantasy world. Hand-drawn battle scenes stretched across huge scrolls of paper. Some were over 10 feet long. Darger taught himself to draw and paint using magazine cutouts as reference. He borrowed faces, reimagined uniforms, and built cities from scratch, all within the tiny confines of his apartment. No one had a clue. His day job was mopping floors. His night job was building an entire universe. Today, Darger is considered a pioneer of outsider art. His work has been exhibited in major museums around the world. Art critics, writers, and filmmakers have all tried to make sense of his mysterious life. But honestly, he never expected any of it to be seen. He created for himself in total isolation, possibly as a way to escape a difficult childhood and a life marked by loss. Henry Darger never chased fame, but he built something massive, haunting, and strangely beautiful. His story flips the idea of success on its head. Sometimes the biggest worlds come from the quietest people. Some people seek solitude by moving into the mountains. St. Simeon Stylites went even further, literally upward. In the 5th century, this Syrian monk climbed onto a stone pillar nearly 10 feet high, and, well, stayed there. Not for a week or a month, but for 37 years. Rain, wind, burning sun, none of it moved him. He remained standing, praying and meditating on a small platform with no roof, no walls, and barely enough space to lie down. What drove him wasn't madness or punishment, it was his radical devotion to spiritual life. As news of Simeon spread, people began to travel across the desert just to see him. Pilgrims gathered at the base of the pillar to hear him preach, often shouting up questions while he offered his words from above. Over time, his pillar grew taller, eventually reaching over 50 feet as platforms were rebuilt. Supplies like food and water were brought up with rope, and waste was lowered the same way. Despite the discomfort, Simeon never complained. For him, physical hardship was the path to spiritual purity. What's stunning is how much impact this solitary act had. He inspired a whole movement of pillar saints throughout the region, men who followed his strange vertical lifestyle. Even emperors sent letters asking for his blessings. His pillar became more than stone, it was a symbol of unwavering belief in something beyond the material world. Simeon didn't write books or lead armies. He just stood on a platform in the sky and became one of the most talked-about figures of his time. Chun Kai from China lived with one of the most extreme medical conditions ever recorded. A massive facial tumor caused by neurofibromatosis grew to over 50 pounds and hung down from his face like a heavy curtain. It affected his speech, vision, and ability to eat. Huang became known around the world when photos of him spread online and in the news. His face had transformed so much that it was hard to believe he was still able to stand upright. Despite this, he fought to keep going, eventually undergoing surgery to reduce the tumor. His case shocked doctors everywhere, and became one of the most talked about examples of human endurance and rare conditions. In 2018, doctors in Indonesia delivered a baby with a single eye in the center of its face. The condition, called cyclopia, is so rare that most cases aren't even seen outside of textbooks. The baby had no nose and lived only briefly, but the image left doctors and the public speechless. It was something almost no one expected to see in real life, a rare glimpse into what extreme genetics can produce. Shandre Orion was born in India with an actual tail, nearly 13 inches long. It's real, covered in hair, and grew naturally from his lower back. Some villagers believed he was a reincarnation of a god, and lined up just to touch him. Doctors say it's a mild form of spina bifida, but to Shandre it's part of who he is. He refused surgery and embraced the attention, becoming a local celebrity without even trying. Diri Montalvo had a massive birthmark that covered most of his back, so large and thick it resembled a turtle shell. Born in Colombia, he became known as the Turtle Boy. His condition, called congenital melanocytic nevus, made life difficult and honestly pretty painful. Some in his village even believed he was cursed. But, thankfully, a team of surgeons eventually helped remove it, completely changing his life and allowing him to move freely for the first time. In her late 80s, Leang Shi from China began growing a horn-like mass from her forehead. Yeah, you heard that right. It just kept growing, eventually reaching over 5 inches in length. Her family was, well, pretty stunned. It looked exactly like something straight out of folklore. A real horn on a real person. Doctors identified it as a rare cutaneous horn made of keratin, the same material as nails. The growth made her famous, not just in China but far beyond. Ma Xiangong from China became a national curiosity when he started doing something that, honestly, most people wouldn't even try to believe, touching live electric wires with his bare hands and feeling absolutely nothing. Scientists examined him, completely puzzled by his ability to resist shock. He even claimed he could power light bulbs just by holding them. While some questioned how, his acts were recorded and left many viewers amazed and confused. Lucky Diamond Rich took body art to the absolute extreme. Covered from head to toe, including his eyelids, gums, and even inside his ears, he holds the record for the most tattooed man on Earth. And, he didn't stop at just one layer of ink either. Many areas are tattooed multiple times. Originally from New Zealand, he turned himself into a walking art piece and now performs around the world as a living canvas. Valeria Lukyanova, a model from Ukraine, gained fame for her unreal appearance. With wide eyes, a tiny waist, flawless skin, and features so doll-like they seemed edited in real life, she became known as the human Barbie. Her transformation sparked huge debate, no doubt about it. Valeria claimed most of her look came from makeup and styling, not surgery, which only added to the mystery. Photos of her face still stop people cold. Kaleem was born in India with hands so large they stunned doctors, each hand weighing over 17 pounds. By the time he was 8 years old, his fingers had grown longer than most adult hands. His condition made everyday tasks nearly impossible, from buttoning shirts to tying shoelaces. Surgeons believe it's a form of localized gigantism, but no clear diagnosis was ever given. Kaleem's photos went viral worldwide. Tessa Evans was born in Ireland with no nose at all. No nasal passage, no cavity, nothing. It's a condition called arrhythmia, and it's so rare that only a handful of cases exist worldwide. Despite it, she learned to breathe through her mouth and lives an active life. Her parents chose not to hide her condition. Instead, they helped Tessa become a symbol of strength, acceptance, and being proud of who you are. Claudio, from Brazil, has a condition that turned his spine severely backward, causing his head to rest upside down on his back. Most thought he wouldn't survive infancy, but Claudio learned to live, work, write, and even use a computer. He became a motivational speaker and shocked everyone by living completely independently. His story challenges everything we think we know about physical limits. Wang Fang was born in China with her left foot completely twisted around, facing backward. Doctors said she might never walk normally. But Wang ignored the doubts. She runs, walks, and even works like anyone else. Her foot might look unusual, but she lives without pain or limits. Instead of hiding it, she embraces her rare condition. In a world obsessed with perfection, Wang proves that different can still mean strong. Born in India, Lakshmi Tatma stunned doctors and villagers alike. She had, 4 arms and 4 legs due to a rare case of conjoined parasitic twinning. Many believed she was a goddess, and families traveled from far and wide to worship her. But, Lakshmi's condition made daily life pretty risky. A major surgery eventually removed the extra limbs and saved her. Today she's healthy and thriving, a living example of how science and spirit often meet in the most unexpected ways. Jaspreet Singh Kalra, also known as the Rubber Boy of India, has one of the most flexible bodies ever recorded. He can twist his head and torso completely around, folding himself in ways that honestly seem impossible. His skills have landed him on talent shows and even in record books. Doctors say his incredible flexibility comes from a rare spinal condition combined with, of course, intense training. Watching him move feels more like animation than real life. Gary Turner holds the Guinness World Record for the stretchiest skin on Earth. Thanks to a condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, his skin acts almost like rubber. He can pull it several inches away from his body, twist it, and even shape it like putty. Now, it's not just a party trick. It's a real genetic disorder that affects connective tissue. Gary travels the world showing what the human body is capable of when biology breaks the usual rules. Daniel Browning Smith is known as the Rubber Boy, and, it's easy to see why. He can twist his body into shapes that honestly don't seem human. Daniel has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a rare condition that makes his joints and skin ultra-flexible. He holds multiple world records for flexibility, like fitting through a tennis racket and even dislocating his shoulders on command. Watching him move feels almost unreal, like he's made of rubber instead of bones. Deddy Koswara, from Indonesia, developed a rare immune disorder that caused wart-like growths to cover his hands and feet. Over time, these growths thickened into twisted, bark-like shapes that looked just like tree roots. He became known as the Tree Man. Surgeons removed pounds of the growths, but unfortunately, they always came back. Despite everything, Didi stayed hopeful. Honestly, his condition is one of the most extreme ever seen by modern medicine. Nong Yu from China was born with bright blue eyes, a rare sight for someone of Asian descent, but what really made him stand out was his ability to see in the dark. Doctors and reporters tested him under pitch-black conditions, and Nong could read, write, and even spot objects with ease. His eyes reflected light like a cat's, which was just fascinating. No one fully understood how he could do it, but Nong became known worldwide as the boy with night vision. Robert Wadlow from the United States reached an unbelievable height of 8 feet 11 inches. Born back in 1918, his growth never stopped due to a rare condition that caused an excess of growth hormone. At his peak, he needed leg braces and custom-built everything, from furniture to shoes. Despite his physical struggles, he remained positive and toured the country as the gentle giant. To this day, no one has surpassed his towering height. Lee Redmond from Utah spent over 30 years growing her nails, and, believe it or not, never cut them once. The total length reached more than 28 feet combined. She could no longer open doors or perform simple tasks, but she found ways to adapt. Her nails twisted into long, curling ribbons, making her instantly recognizable. She once said that growing them was about patience and discipline, not fame. Even after an accident broke them, her story continues to inspire. Deandra Forest is a groundbreaking model born with albinism, a condition that makes her skin and hair extremely light despite her African-American roots. Her golden features and piercing green eyes have turned her into a fashion icon. She became one of the first women with albinism to sign with a major modeling agency. Deandra challenges beauty standards and uses her platform to educate others about genetic diversity and acceptance. Wim Hof, nicknamed the Iceman, does things most people wouldn't even try once. I mean, really, who climbs mountains in shorts? Well, Wim does. He's also run a marathon above the Arctic Circle barefoot and sat in ice baths for hours. Yeah, hours. Scientists have studied him and discovered that he can actually control his body temperature through specific breathing techniques. Wim believes that anyone can train their body and mind the way he did. Whether or not that's true, you've got to admit his cold-defying feats are still unmatched. Akshat Saxena was born in India with 24 fingers and toes, 7 on each hand and 5 on each foot. That's more than anyone has ever recorded. Doctors explained it was a rare form of polydactyly, where extra digits develop during growth. His hands, honestly, looked like something straight out of a comic book. Eventually, surgeons removed the extra digits to improve functionality. But for a while, Akshat held a world record as the most naturally digit-rich person alive. This is a real person who underwent one of the most dramatic body transformations ever recorded. Completely covered from head to toe in custom-designed prosthetics and body paint, this man turned himself into a lizard-like being. We're talking scales, claws, and even a textured chest. Some people think it's just a publicity stunt or maybe performance art, while others believe it's part of an extreme identity project that mixes art, body modification, and character immersion. Whether for science fiction or self-expression, it's nearly impossible to look away. Shiloh Pepin was born with a condition so rare doctors didn't expect her to live past a few days. Her legs were fused together from birth, giving her the appearance of a mermaid, a real case of Sirenamelia. Despite her condition, Shiloh defied every prediction. She swam, danced, and even appeared on national TV. Her personality was bright, her spirit unstoppable. She became known as the Mermaid Girl, and left behind a story that inspired millions around the world. Brook Greenberg baffled the medical world. Though she lived to be 20, her body and mind never aged beyond that of a toddler. She stayed tiny, didn't speak, and never developed like other kids. Doctors called her condition Syndrome X, but no one fully understood how or why she stayed frozen in time. Brook's life became a mystery that challenged science itself. Her story fascinated researchers and showed just how unpredictable human biology can be. Jesus Atzives from Mexico was born with a condition called hypertrichosis, which causes thick hair to grow over most of the face and body. The look earned him the nickname Wolfman, and he became famous in circuses and documentaries. But underneath the fur was a thoughtful, soft-spoken man. She used his platform to raise awareness and promote body acceptance. He embraced what made him different, and made it unforgettable. Lara and Mara Bawar aren't just twins. they're walking art. Born in Sao Paulo, they have albinism, which gives them pale skin and light hair that contrast beautifully with their African features. Their unique look caught the eye of global fashion photographers, and they quickly became rising stars. Their photos challenge beauty norms and show how genetics can create truly rare, captivating appearances that redefine modern modeling. In China, Wang Qun shocked everyone when he began growing what looked like a horn from the side of his head. Made of keratin, like fingernails, the horn kept growing slowly until it reached nearly 4 inches long. Locals called it a devil's horn, but Wang didn't seem fazed. Doctors say it's a rare skin condition, but few cases grow this large. His appearance drew global curiosity and sparked endless rumors about whether it was even real. In Mexico, the Ramos Gomez family shares a rare condition: congenital hypertrichosis. It causes thick hair to grow on their faces, including foreheads, cheeks, and noses. Most families pass down recipes or heirlooms. This family passed down an ultra-rare genetic trait. They embraced it fully, performing in circuses and proudly showing their lineage to the world. It's one of the most visually striking inherited traits ever recorded. Elaine Davidson took body piercing to a level no one else has reached. With over 11,000 piercings, on her face, chest, arms, and even tongue, she holds the Guinness World Record. Originally from Brazil, she now lives in the UK and continues to add more. Her look is jaw-dropping, covered in metal from head to toe, but Elaine says it's not about the shock. It's about expressing freedom and controlling how she looks in her own way. Jodie Amja stands just over 2 feet tall, officially the world's smallest living woman. Born in India, she has a condition called primordial dwarfism. Her size didn't stop her from dreaming big. Jodie became an actress and appeared in international TV shows. Everywhere she goes, people are stunned by her voice, charm, and confidence. She may be the smallest adult in the world, but her presence is anything but small. Supatra Sasuan, from Thailand, was once named the world's hairiest girl by Guinness. She has Ambra's syndrome, an extremely rare condition that causes thick hair to grow over her face, arms, and upper body. Kids once teased her, but she didn't let that stop her. Supatra became proud of her look and spoke out about self-love and uniqueness. Today she's a symbol of confidence and proof that beauty really does come in every form. Byron Schlanker holds the world record for the widest tongue, over 3.3 inches across. Yeah, you heard that right. It's so wide he can even hold an entire soda can flat on it. Byron, who lives in New York, didn't even realize he was special until, get this, his daughter pointed it out. And here's the kicker. Ironically, she also holds the record for the widest female tongue. I mean, talk about a family trait. Their unique appearances have gone viral, turning this unusual feature into a fun little piece of internet fame. Back in the 1800s, hunters in India stumbled upon something truly wild: a young boy living among wolves. He walked on all fours, ate raw meat, and completely avoided people. This boy was named Dena Sonichar, and believe it or not, many think his story inspired. Raised by animals, Dena never fully adapted to human life. He preferred silence, raw food, and isolation. His case fascinated scientists and storytellers alike, becoming one of the most famous feral child cases ever recorded. In the early 1900s, Pasqual Pinon became a sensation across the United States for what seemed to be a second face growing out of his forehead. And no, it wasn't just a clever trick. He actually had a large tumor that sideshow promoters shaped into a face, possibly over an actual parasitic twin. While the second face didn't move, his appearance drew massive crowds. Pasqual toured with circuses, and became one of the most talked-about performers of his time. Myrtle Corbin was born with a diplopgus twin, a rare condition where her body developed 2 separate pelvises and 4 legs. She had control over one pair, while the others moved passively. In the 1800s, she became a popular sideshow performer known as the Four-Legged Girl from Texas. Despite her condition, she lived a full life, married, and had children. Her case remains one of the most well-documented medical anomalies in history. Mihelo Totos, a French performer, could eat anything, literally, from metal to rubber, even an entire airplane over the course of 2 years. His stomach lining was unusually thick, allowing him to digest objects most people would never even consider. He ate bicycles, shopping carts, TVs, and more. Doctors confirmed his bizarre ability. Michel turned it into a stage act, becoming known worldwide as Monsieur Mange Tout, or Mr. Eat All. Isaac Sprague was known as the living skeleton. Born in the 1800s, he suffered from an extreme wasting condition, likely a form of muscular atrophy. As an adult, he weighed only about 43 pounds despite eating normally. He joined P.T. Barnum's circus and became one of the most recognizable sideshow figures of the era. Despite his frail body, he lived into his 40s and worked to support his family through performance. Michael Ruffinelli holds the title for the world's widest natural hips, measuring over 8 feet around. Her body weight distributes heavily in her lower half, giving her a figure that shocks people at first glance. She's healthy, active, and proud of her look. Michael says she doesn't struggle with self-esteem. Instead, she embraces her curves and challenges beauty standards with confidence and style. Zheng Jinlian was the tallest woman ever recorded, standing at 8 feet 1 3/4 inches. Born in China in 1964, her height resulted from a condition that caused uncontrollable growth. Even as a young girl, she towered over everyone. She had difficulty walking and faced many health challenges, passing away at just 17. Her incredible height remains unmatched among women to this day, and is still studied by medical experts. Romário dos Santos Alves from Brazil became known for his massive, unnatural biceps. But they didn't grow from training. He injected them with synthol oil, causing his muscles to swell dangerously. His arms became so heavy, doctors considered amputation. Romário later admitted he was addicted to the attention and the look, but the toll on his body was serious. His story became a cautionary tale about extreme body modification. Ram Singh Chauhan from India has the longest mustache on earth, stretching over 18 feet. He began growing it in the 1980s and hasn't cut it since. Caring for it takes hours, including daily oiling, combing, and wrapping. He sees his mustache as a symbol of honor and tradition. Ram Singh's appearance draws crowds wherever he goes, and his legendary facial hair has become a source of national pride. Phineas Gage was a railroad worker in the 1800s who survived a freak accident. A metal rod shot through his skull and out the top of his head. He lived, walked, and even spoke afterward. But something changed. His personality was completely different. He became one of the first major cases in neuroscience to show how brain injuries could affect behavior. His skull is still on display at Harvard Medical School. Rümeysa Gelgi from Turkey stands at 7 feet 1 inch, making her the tallest living woman today. She has Weaver syndrome, a condition that causes accelerated growth and other complications. Despite mobility challenges, Rümeysa uses her platform to educate and inspire others. She holds multiple Guinness records and models custom fashion to fit her frame. Her towering height is only part of what makes her remarkable. Ashlyn Blocker looks like any other girl at first glance, but her body works very differently. She was born with a rare condition called congenital insensitivity to pain. That means she can touch a hot stove, scrape her knee, or even break a bone, and feel nothing at all. As a baby, her parents noticed something was off when she didn't cry during shots or flinch when injured. While it might sound like a superpower, it's actually dangerous. Ashlyn has to be constantly monitored because she can't tell when something is wrong. She could walk around with a serious infection or injury and not know it. Her story gained global attention and helped doctors learn more about how pain works in the human body. Ashlyn's life is full of caution, yet she keeps a positive outlook. What she lives with every day reminds us that pain, as unpleasant as it is, plays a vital role in protecting us. Sydney Smith from Los Angeles took inspiration from the long-necked women of the Kayan tribe and turned it into her own unique journey. At just 28 years old, she wore custom-made brass rings around her neck every day for years, gradually increasing their number until her neck appeared far longer than average. Her unusual look earned her the nickname Giraffe Woman. Sydney said the rings gave her a sense of beauty and identity she didn't find anywhere else. She became a global curiosity, but eventually removed the rings after struggling with physical discomfort and social pressure. Her muscles had weakened, and adjusting to normal life again wasn't easy. Still, she said the experience helped her understand self-expression, identity, and the cost of extreme transformation. Sydney's story shows how far people go to explore who they are, even if the results surprise the world. Maria Oz, a Ukrainian artist and internet personality, became famous for her massive anime-like eyes that almost don't seem real. Her photos spread fast across social media, with people wondering if they were edited, but videos confirmed her look was genuine. Her unusually large eyes give her a doll-like, almost surreal appearance that instantly grabs attention. Some speculated about genetic factors, while others assumed cosmetic enhancement. Maria claimed her features are natural, and her wide-eyed expression became her trademark. While she keeps much of her personal life private, her face alone turned her into a viral icon. Her gaze is so intense and unique that it feels like something straight out of a fantasy film. Maria Oz remains one of the most visually unforgettable faces on the internet, leaving viewers curious every time she appears on screen. Jonathan Pitre, a Canadian teenager, lived with one of the most painful conditions known: epidermolysis bullosa. His skin was so fragile it blistered or tore from the lightest touch, almost like paper. Daily routines most people take for granted were full of risk for him. Bandage changes took hours and caused excruciating pain, yet Jonathan faced it all with incredible strength. He became known as the Butterfly Boy because of how delicate his skin was, like a butterfly's wing. Despite constant pain, he used his voice to raise awareness and support others with the same condition. Jonathan gave interviews, appeared at events, and helped raise millions for research. His courage and positivity inspired people around the world. He passed away in 2018 at only 17 years old, but his impact continues. His story isn't just about pain, it's about the power of a determined spirit in a fragile body. Nur Syaida, a teacher from Indonesia, shocked doctors and terrified locals when metal wires began growing out of her body. Dozens of thin, rust-colored strands slowly emerged from her chest and stomach, and no one could explain how or why. X-rays showed the wires weren't implants. They moved, they returned after removal, and they hurt. Rumors spread fast: black magic, curses, even possession. But Nur Syaida wasn't trying to scare anyone. She just wanted answers. Her case attracted international attention, yet science never cracked the mystery. Some saw her as a medical anomaly, others as something not meant to be understood. She eventually withdrew from public life, leaving behind photos and whispers. Nur Syaida's story ended without a clear diagnosis. And maybe that's what makes it stick in our minds. It's not always about what we can explain. Sometimes the most unforgettable people are the ones we still can't figure out. Robert Wadlow wasn't just tall, he was colossal. Standing at an unbelievable 8 feet 11 inches, he remains the tallest human ever recorded. Born in 1918 in Alton, Illinois, Robert's height wasn't obvious at first, but by the time he was 5 years old, he was already taller than most grown men. His growth never slowed down, driven by a condition called gigantism, which caused his pituitary gland to release way too much growth hormone. By age 8, he was wearing clothes meant for adults and shaking hands with celebrities. At 13, he towered over his teachers. His size was so extreme that he needed custom-made shoes that were over 18 inches long. Everything about Robert was larger than life. He had a soft voice, a gentle presence, and never let his size stop him from living fully. He loved reading, photography, and even joined the Boy Scouts, with a tent and sleeping bag specially made just for him. Despite needing leg braces and constant medical care, Robert traveled the country with the Ringling Brothers and later with a shoe company that sponsored him. He greeted crowds, took pictures with fans, and became a symbol of strength and uniqueness. People weren't just amazed by his height, they were drawn to his calm and kind personality. Photos from the time show him next to average-height adults who barely reach his waist. The contrast is jaw-dropping, and it's no wonder people couldn't believe their eyes when they met him in person. Even today, people still visit his statue in Alton, marveling at how someone like him could really exist. His story is unforgettable, not just because of how tall he was, but because of how he lived that height with grace. At first glance, people thought they were seeing a miracle. A living, breathing woman with no head. Betty Lou Williams was known across sideshows as the Headless Girl, and the illusion was so convincing it stopped crowds in their tracks. Born in 1932, Betty had a rare medical condition that left her body severely deformed. But what made her famous wasn't just the condition itself, it was how it was presented. She was placed inside a carefully designed setup, with mirrors, lighting, and machinery that made her appear alive, headless, and unexplainably still conscious. Her torso would move, her chest would rise and fall, and her limbs would shift slightly, giving the effect of a decapitated but very much alive person. Behind the scenes, Betty was fully in control. She worked inside the rig for hours a day and reportedly earned a solid income doing it. The illusion was terrifying and fascinating. Doctors came to examine it, children stared in disbelief, and it became one of the most talked about acts in sideshow history. Betty wasn't just a part of the show. She was the show. Her stillness, timing, and awareness turned a medical condition into a living performance. Even now, vintage photos of the act still confuse people who swear it couldn't be real. Leonard Tras didn't start life as a spectacle. Born in 1805 in Maine, he lived a simple, working-class life, until a horse-riding accident in his 20s changed everything. His spine was permanently damaged, but the condition kept getting worse. Over time, his back twisted further until he couldn't stand upright. His chin was locked close to his chest, and he had to walk bent almost completely forward. He could no longer work, couldn't lift his head, and suffered constant pain. Most would have disappeared into poverty. Leonard did the opposite. He documented his condition, sold copies of his own autobiography, and even posed for photographs. His story spread through newspapers not because of pity, but because of how visibly unusual his condition was. People couldn't believe that someone could survive in that state, let alone travel and promote their own image. Trask eventually became known as the Wonderful Invalid. He turned his body into a message, not for sympathy but as proof of human endurance. The twisted posture, the locked joints, the unmistakable silhouette, his appearance became iconic. He wasn't a performer, but people were still drawn to him. His portrait remains one of the most bizarre and haunting examples of real physical transformation recorded on camera in the 19th century. Zaro Aga stood out before he even spoke. Deep-set eyes, a long white beard, and a presence that felt ancient. Born in Turkey sometime in the 1700s, or so he claimed, Zaro said he lived to be 160 years old. Whether the number is accurate or not, his story created a sensation. He told reporters he'd met Napoleon, served in multiple wars, and even traveled the world late into his life. The man didn't just age, he multiplied history. He appeared in newspapers across Europe, and the US photos show a thin man with heavily wrinkled skin, standing upright, alert, and conversational. Doctors examined him. Debates followed. No one could fully confirm or disprove his age, but the image of a man that old, still moving and talking, was enough to spark international attention. Zaro didn't live quietly. He gave interviews, met celebrities, and posed proudly in traditional robes. Whether he was 160 or simply very old, the fascination was real. He became a global curiosity not because of records but because of presence, the kind that made people stop and stare, wondering how someone could walk through so many eras and still be here. They appeared out of nowhere. Two children, green-skinned, speaking no known language, wearing clothes that didn't match anything locals had seen. This wasn't modern times, it was 12th century England, in the quiet village of Woolpit. The children said they came from a place with no sun, a world of permanent twilight. That's all they could explain. The boy died young, but the girl survived. As she learned English, she said they got lost underground before stumbling into the surface world. No one could find where they came from, and no one had ever seen skin like theirs. Some believed they were sick. Others thought they were aliens or travelers from a hidden civilization. Over time, the green tint faded, but the legend didn't. Paintings, books, and even modern theories still chase the origin of the green children. They weren't ghosts. They weren't monsters. They were real kids who didn't fit into anything the people of that time understood. And centuries later, we still don't have a clear answer. Julia Gnus didn't just have tattoos, she became a walking mural. Known as the most tattooed woman in the world, over 95% of her body was covered in vibrant ink. What made her story more than just colorful skin was how it started. Julia was diagnosed with a rare skin condition that caused her to blister severely when exposed to sunlight. She chose tattoos not just for expression, but as a way to take control of something that had once controlled her. Dragons, castles, movie scenes, portraits. Her body became a canvas of art and survival. She didn't hide from the world, she stood out in it. Julia appeared on TV and documentaries and even in Guinness World Records. People would stare, ask questions, sometimes even doubt it was real. But every inch was carefully crafted, every line a decision. Her presence was intense but not overwhelming. She had a quiet confidence, the kind that comes from turning pain into power. Julia Gnus wasn't just tattooed, she was layered with stories, all told in ink and all visible with just a glance. In the quiet roads of western Pennsylvania, a strange figure once walked alone at night. His face was barely a face at all, no eyes, no nose, a twisted mouth. People called him the Green Man. Others whispered his real name, Raymond Robinson. As a child, he climbed a power line and was struck with thousands of volts. The shock left him permanently disfigured. He survived, but his injuries were severe. his facial features destroyed. The damage was so extreme that he avoided going out during the day. Instead, he walked the streets at night, often for miles, completely in silence. Local teenagers began to notice him and gave him the nickname Charlie No Face. Some claimed he glowed, others said he wasn't human, but the truth was simple. Raymond was a real man, living with unthinkable scars, and trying to find peace. Those who dared speak to him discovered he was kind, soft-spoken, even funny. He liked Coca-Cola and didn't mind being approached. The legend made him a monster. But Raymond never did anything monstrous. He became a ghost story by accident, a real man, walking in the dark, misunderstood by almost everyone who passed him. She had no arms, no legs, but Violetta didn't sit in the shadows, she took center stage. Born Aloysia Wagner in Germany, she had a rare condition called tetra amelia, meaning she was born without all four limbs. Most people would assume a life of silence and stillness followed. Violetta proved them all wrong. She became a traveling performer, not just an exhibit but a star. She appeared in sideshows across Europe and America, carried with dignity and framed in grace. In every photo her posture is upright, her head is held high, she signed autographs using her mouth, she spoke confidently to curious visitors, and most of all she redefined what people thought was possible. Spectators came expecting pity. They left stunned by her elegance and control. She didn't hide behind curtains or play up shock. She wore elegant dresses, posed for portraits, and challenged the standards of what beauty and ability looked like. Her presence was so strong that even decades later her images stopped people mid-scroll. Her body may have been missing limbs, but nothing about her was small. Violetta didn't need arms to hold attention. She did it just by being exactly who she was. Before she was even a teenager, Josephine Bois-Deschênes had grown a thick, dark beard, longer than most grown men's. Instead of being hidden or ridiculed by her family, she was embraced and given the stage name Madame Clofulia. Born in Geneva in 1827, she had a condition that caused her to grow a full beard by age 8. At first, she was simply a curiosity, but her striking look, part Victorian lady, part full-bearded gentleman, made her famous. Her beard grew over 6 inches long, and she would part it, curl it, and sometimes even tie ribbons in it. By the time she joined P.T. Barnum's American Museum in New York, she had already toured half of Europe. But her fame didn't just come from her appearance. She carried herself like royalty. In gowns, corsets, and jewelry, she took photos that looked more like portraits of nobility than sideshow flyers. People came expecting to gawk. Instead, they found themselves admiring her confidence, her poise, her undeniable beauty. Clofulia wasn't trying to prove anything. She was simply being seen, and she made sure the world saw her the way she chose to be remembered. He couldn't speak. He didn't recognize his own name. He walked on all fours and refused to wear clothes. When hunters discovered him in the woods of Germany in 1725, Peter the Wild Boy didn't look like someone raised by humans. He was filthy, barefoot, and survived by eating raw plants and whatever he could find. The King of England heard the story and brought Peter to court, not to be studied, but to be shown off. He became a living mystery. Was he raised by animals? Had he escaped from somewhere? No one ever figured it out. He never learned to speak more than a few basic words. He never explained his past, but he became famous across Europe. Artists painted his image. Royals brought him to parties. People wanted to see the boy who didn't belong. Peter's green eyes, wild hair, and awkward movements fascinated the public. He lived well into adulthood under royal care, walking in circles endlessly, still untamed. Some believe he may have had Pitt-Hopkins syndrome, a condition unknown at the time, but even with today's knowledge, his early life remains unsolved. He didn't speak, but he made the world listen. He stood just 29 inches tall, but George Washington Morrison Nutt had the confidence of someone 10 times his size. On stage, he was known as Commodore Nutt, a performer who shared the spotlight with P.T. Barnum's top star, General Tom Thumb. But Nutt wasn't just a sidekick. He had charisma, timing, and the rare ability to win over crowds instantly. He danced, sang, and posed proudly in military-style outfits, complete with gold-trimmed jackets and tall boots. His performances weren't just about size, they were about presence. Barnum recognized that, and turned Nutt into a household name. He performed for President Lincoln, toured Europe, and appeared in grand parades beside Tom Thumb, who he actually didn't get along with off stage. That rivalry only made things more interesting. Fans picked favorites. Newspapers followed every detail. And Nutt, always in uniform, became a living symbol of confidence and charm packed into a tiny frame. He didn't ride fame quietly, he embraced it. Whether standing beside giants or royalty, he held his ground and smiled for the camera. Commodore Nutt proved that performance wasn't about stature. It was about style, and he had plenty of it. Jean Libera didn't just share the stage, he shared his body. Born in 1884 in Italy, Jean had one of the rarest physical conditions ever documented, a parasitic twin named Jacques, permanently attached to his abdomen. Jacques had a partially formed face, shoulder and arm, not a complete person but enough to be seen, enough to move slightly. Doctors were fascinated, crowds were stunned. Jean wasn't just a man, he was two bodies in one, fused together in a way that seemed impossible. He lived a full life, touring across Europe and the United States, performing in medical exhibitions and circus shows. He would stand on stage, shirtless, calmly presenting the motionless form of his twin. It wasn't violent, it wasn't dramatic, it was eerie. Jacques never spoke, never reacted, but he was visible in every photo. Jean, despite carrying an extra life on his stomach, lived into his 30s and stayed in good health. The condition is almost never seen today. Surgeons can usually remove parasitic twins in infancy. But back then, Jean lived with his brother's body his entire life. He didn't just show up and shock people, he became one of the most unforgettable human anomalies of his century. In 1877, a teenage girl named Rosa Matilda Richter stepped into a cannon. Not for a photo, but for launch. She was just 14 years old, performing under the name Zazel, and she became the first person in history to be shot from a cannon as part of a live show. The act was terrifying even in theory, but Zazel made it real. She climbed into a spring-powered cannon in front of a roaring audience at the Royal Aquarium in London, and was fired through the air, landing in a safety net. No tricks, no illusions, just physics, courage, and spectacle. Her small size and acrobatic skill made her the perfect fit. She didn't just fly once, she repeated the stunt hundreds of times, traveling with circuses and attracting huge crowds. People couldn't look away. They had never seen a human move through the air like that without injury. And for a long time, they only saw it from her. Eventually, injuries from the force of the landings caught up with her and she retired. But the image of a young girl being blasted into the sky became part of circus legend. Zazel didn't just fly. She launched a whole new kind of performance. Martin Van Buren Bates wasn't just tall. He was enormous in every direction. Born in Kentucky in 1837, he grew rapidly from childhood and reached a staggering height of nearly 8 feet. But it wasn't only his height that turned heads. His build was massive. At over 470 pounds, he was strong, broad-shouldered, and towered above nearly everyone he met. Despite his size, he lived a surprisingly active life. He served as a Confederate officer during the Civil War, where soldiers nicknamed him the Giant of the South. After the war, he joined a traveling show and toured the country as a living marvel. But it was his marriage that made headlines around the world. He married Anna Haining Bates, another true giant, who stood over 7 feet 11 inches tall. Their wedding was a public event. Their custom-made bed was nearly 10 feet long and 8 feet wide. Thousands came to see them. Photographers documented their quiet, dignified expressions. They weren't circus caricatures, they were a couple living a very real, very large life. Tragically, both of their children died shortly after birth, likely due to complications related to size. Still, Martin lived into his 70s, far longer than most people with gigantism. His portrait remains one of the most striking in 19th century photography, a man so tall that even full-grown adults barely reached his waist. Mary Ann Bevan was once a nurse, a mother of 4, and known in her community for her kindness and hard work. But after developing acromegaly in her 30s, her body began to change rapidly. Her jaw thickened, her forehead grew, and her facial features became distorted. The disease, caused by excess growth hormone, didn't just alter her appearance, it changed the course of her life. After her husband died, Mary Ann struggled to support her family. When she saw an ad for an Ugliest Woman contest, she entered not for attention but for survival. She won. From there she joined a sideshow billed under that cruel title. But behind the posters was a smart, sharp-witted woman who used her role to earn a living and secure her children's future. Photos show her face clearly changed by her condition, but what they don't show is the grit behind her decision. Mary Ann never stopped working. She appeared at fairs, on postcards, and eventually at Coney Island. People stared, but she kept going. She didn't let the title define her. What made her truly unusual wasn't her appearance. It was her choice to face the world head-on, even when it stared back. Tom Wiggins was born into slavery in Georgia in 1849, blind, nonverbal, and presumed to be mentally disabled. No one expected him to function, let alone perform. But before he turned 5, he was playing the piano with extraordinary skill. He didn't just play songs, he recreated entire pieces after hearing them once. By 8, he was composing his own music. Audiences couldn't believe what they were hearing. A blind black child who couldn't speak yet could sit at a piano and perform with the precision of a trained master. He became known as Blind Tom, and by the age of 10, he was touring the country, playing for sold-out crowds. Some doubted it was real. But time after time he delivered, mimicking complex pieces, imitating sounds, playing multiple songs in different styles, even creating thunderstorms and train noises using only piano keys. His memory was nearly photographic. He could recite long speeches after hearing them once. Crowds called him a genius, others called him a phenomenon. He didn't need to speak, his music said everything. Though he never gained independence and remained under guardianship his entire life, Tom Wiggins left behind a legacy that still stuns pianists and historians. He wasn't just rare, he was one of a kind. Sarah Biffen was born in England in 1784 without arms or hands. In an era when people with disabilities were hidden or ignored, she became a respected artist, known for her precise, detailed miniature portraits, all painted using her mouth. At a young age she was exhibited at fairs as a curiosity. But what caught people's attention wasn't just her physical condition. It was what she could do in spite of it. She wrote, sewed, drew, and painted, using specially designed tools she held between her teeth. Her ability to create lifelike portraits on tiny ivory surfaces amazed everyone who saw her work. Critics thought it had to be a trick, but she demonstrated her skill live, proving it was real. Her breakthrough came when the Earl of Morton noticed her talent and funded her formal art education at the Royal Academy. Soon, Sarah was taking commissions from the British elite, including members of the royal family. Her signature appeared in the corner of delicate watercolors, created with a brush no bigger than a pin, all guided by movements of her lips, neck, and jaw. She became a full-time artist, not a sideshow performer. Her work still exists today, carefully preserved in museums and collections. Sarah Biffen didn't just overcome the limitations of her body, she mastered a craft many with full ability never achieve, and she did it with nothing but fierce precision and pure will. Joseph Borulaski was barely over 3 feet tall, but everything else about him was larger than life. Born in 1739 in Poland, he was well-educated, well-mannered, and fiercely intelligent. Unlike many little people of his time who were forced into degrading performances, Joseph chose a different path. He embraced nobility. Dressed in fine clothes and speaking multiple languages, he toured the royal courts of Europe, not as a spectacle, but as a guest. He played music, debated politics, and charmed queens and emperors. Wherever he went, he left an impression. He wasn't carried or hidden. He walked into rooms with confidence and left with admirers. He wrote a memoir, ran in aristocratic circles, and became known not as a curiosity, but as a gentleman. In an age where physical difference often meant social exclusion, Joseph turned his stature into a symbol of uniqueness rather than limitation. He lived to be nearly 100 years old, outliving many of the royals who once applauded him. Today, a life-size statue of him stands in Durham, England, not tucked away in a museum corner but proudly displayed in public. He wasn't a circus act or an oddity. He was Count Borulaski, a rare example of someone who defied every expectation history had for him. Joseph Borulaski stood small in stature but tall in legacy. Just like every rare soul in this video. From giants to cannonballs, their stories prove one truth: extraordinary is real. That's about it. Write in the comments which of these people impressed you the most. For more useful information, watch other videos.